Investigators later uncovered photographs belonging to a woman named Rebecca Bletch. On the morning of Sunday, June 29, 2014, another jogger stumbled upon Rebecca's lifeless body along a commonly traveled jogging path. Located less than 1 mile from her residence near an automobile roadway in Muskegon County. At first, authorities believed she may have been the victim of a tragic hit-and-run accident. However, as the investigation progressed, it was soon determined that Becky had not been struck by a vehicle at all, but had instead been shot 3 separate times in the back of her head. Rebecca's family and close friends were utterly devastated by the brutal loss. Yet they continued to hold on to hope that one day justice would finally be served. That long period of waiting came to an end with the arrest of Jeff Willis and the seizure of his personal laptop. An event that lifted a heavy emotional burden from those seeking answers. A forensic examination of Willis's computer revealed a folder labeled VIX, which contained numerous images Rebecca herself had previously uploaded to various social media platforms. But even more disturbing was what else investigators found inside that folder. Alongside Rebecca's photographs were thousands of graphic torture recordings and so-called snuff videos, exposing an unsettling and deeply ingrained obsession with extreme violence and sadistic fantasies. Yet one specific discovery proved to be even more alarming than the rest. Investigators noticed a separate directory titled JH. Inside it were dozens of photographs depicting Jessica Hringa. What made this detail especially chilling was the folder's creation date. April 26, 2013, the exact same day Jessica vanished without a trace. From that moment forward, Jeff Willis immediately became the primary suspect in Jessica Hringa's disappearance. Additional evidence further tightened the case against him. Surveillance footage obtained from a nearby business showed a silver minivan, later identified as belonging to Willis, speeding away from the Sternberg Road Exxon gas station at approximately 11 p.m. on the night Jessica went missing. Furthermore, a composite police sketch created using descriptions from witnesses who observed a suspicious man near the station that evening bore a striking resemblance to Willis himself. Investigators also discovered that Willis had a documented history of harassing vulnerable women while they were at their workplaces. Initially, witnesses who had been questioned about the night of Jessica's disappearance reported seeing nothing out of the ordinary. However, as time passed and memories were re-examined, several individuals recalled Willis as a frequent customer at the Exxon station. Most described his behavior as persistently annoying flirtation, yet many acknowledged that it made Jessica feel profoundly uncomfortable and uneasy. On September 20th, 2016, Jeff Willis was formally charged with the kidnapping and murder of Jessica Hringa. Prosecutors alleged that Willis abducted Jessica directly from the gas station where she worked before transporting her to his grandfather's vacant residence. According to court documents, it was at that empty house where Jessica endured a prolonged series of cruel and sadistic acts before ultimately being executed. Authorities stated that she was killed using the same .357 Taurus revolver that was later recovered from Willis's van. Although the firearm's serial number had been partially filed down in an attempt to conceal its origin, forensic specialists were still able to successfully trace the weapon back to Willis through extensive DNA testing, combined with the disturbing contents of the JH folder discovered on his computer, as well as the bondage equipment and graphic videos seized during the investigation. Law enforcement painted a horrifying portrait of a man who meticulously planned and carried out acts of extreme violence. In a shocking development, Willis's cousin Kevin Bloom, a former correctional officer, eventually admitted to assisting in the disposal of Jessica's body. Bloom confessed that after being shown her remains in the basement of Willis's home, he helped his cousin remove and conceal the evidence. His reluctant cooperation ultimately became a crucial component in strengthening the prosecution's case. Bloom's testimony provided investigators with insight into events that would have otherwise remained hidden. In May of 2018, Jeff Willis stood trial for the murder of Jessica Ringo. At the time, it is important to note that Willis was already serving a sentence of life without the possibility of parole following his 2017 conviction for the murder of Rebecca Bletch. However, Jessica's case posed a unique legal challenge for prosecutors. Because Jessica's body was never recovered, the case was classified as a no-body homicide, a type of prosecution widely regarded by legal experts as exceptionally difficult to prove in court. Despite this challenge, the sheer amount of circumstantial evidence presented was overwhelming. Willis's silver minivan, the incriminating VIX and JH folders on his laptop, the gas station surveillance footage, and multiple witness testimonies collectively pointed toward his undeniable guilt. Adding to this mountain of evidence, one of Willis's co-workers testified that Willis had openly bragged about his knowledge of how to dispose of a human body, claiming he had conducted extensive research on the subject, testimony that jurors reportedly found especially damning. Willis's defense team attempted to counter the prosecution's narrative by emphasizing the absence of direct physical evidence. They argued that no DNA belonging to Jessica had been found in Willis's home or on his clothing, insisting that this lack of forensic proof introduced reasonable doubt. The defense also floated alternative explanations for Jessica's disappearance, including the suggestion that she may have voluntarily left her life behind due to dissatisfaction with her job or personal relationships. However, the jury ultimately found the prosecution's argument to be compelling beyond doubt. After only an hour and a half of deliberation, they returned a verdict finding Jeff Willis guilty of both kidnapping and first-degree murder. When news broke that he had been sentenced to life in prison, Jessica's family reacted with tears of relief, having endured years of agony and answered questions. Despite the conviction and life sentence, one painful and unresolved question continued to haunt everyone involved in the case. Where was Jessica Ringo's body? Kevin Bloom, who later pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact, claimed that he had assisted Jeff Willis in burying Jessica's remains in a wooded region near the intersection of Sheridan and Lakeland roads. Bloom cooperated with authorities by leading them to several possible burial locations, but each search ended in frustration. Law enforcement conducted extensive operations across multiple sites, including large-scale excavations and thorough cadaver dog sweeps. Unfortunately, none of these efforts produced any trace of Jessica's remains. Investigators eventually concluded that Willis had likely anticipated his cousin's cooperation with police and had taken precautionary steps. It appeared that Willis had returned to the original burial site, exhumed Jessica's remains, and relocated them to an entirely different and unknown location. After that point, Bloom could do little more than offer educated guesses based on what he remembered. Authorities compiled a list of potential secondary burial sites and launched investigations into more than a dozen locations. These ranged from isolated rural properties to abandoned lots scattered throughout the area. Despite the time, manpower, and resources invested, the searches yielded no results. Tragically, Jessica Ringo's body was never recovered. Jessica's mother, Shelley Ringo, has spoken publicly about the unbearable pain of not knowing where her daughter rests. She has described the uncertainty as an ongoing torment, yet she has repeatedly vowed to never stop searching for answers. Community members have echoed that determination. Local volunteers, driven by a shared desire to bring Jessica home, have organized search efforts and refused to abandon hope. Even years after her disappearance, Jessica's case left a deep and lasting impact on the city of Norton Shores. Beyond the heartbreak felt by her family, the tragedy exposed serious vulnerabilities in workplace safety, particularly for individuals working late-night shifts alone. In response to these concerns, Michigan lawmakers enacted the Jessica Ringo Act in 2016, the legislation mandated increased safety measures for gas stations and convenience stores, including requirements for multiple employees during overnight shifts, the installation of panic buttons, and the implementation of continuous 24/7 surveillance systems. The community continues to honor Jessica's memory through annual candlelight vigils and fundraising events held in support of her son, Zine. In the aftermath of Jessica's disappearance, Zine was raised by his father and grandmother, surrounded by a community that sought to keep his mother's legacy alive. Her murder stripped Norton Shores of a sense of innocence and stands as a grim reminder of the devastating consequences of violent crime. Yet, even in the face of such darkness, the story carries elements of hope. Whether it is the bravery of a 16-year-old who narrowly escaped a similar fate, the tireless dedication of investigators, or the resilience shown by Jessica's family, there are countless examples of people standing against cruelty and refusing to surrender to despair. Still, Jessica's absence and the failure to recover her remains remain an open wound that has never fully healed. Jeff Willis, now serving multiple life sentences, has shown no remorse and has provided no further information regarding Jessica's whereabouts. Perhaps one day he will, but until that time comes, the case remains a somber chapter in the history of Norton Shores. It stands as a testament not only to the pain caused by unresolved loss, but also to the strength and perseverance of those who refuse to stop seeking the truth.